The following is a tutorial on how to use and maintain the Obsidian library. So after installing with Conan, we're going to need to go to the Property Manager. You'll find the Property Manager within one of the tabs on Visual Studio and add an existing property sheet, the one that's generated by Conan. This will link all our dependencies for us. No longer do you have to go into the settings and do it yourself. So let's start from scratch. First, we're going to need to import our library, obsidian.hpp. And we're going to need to create a struct that would represent one of our component's props. Properties are the interface between components and are passed down. They can also pass up information in the form of percolating function callbacks. Let's put a color, for example, and a function. We'll make it a function that could, say, mutate a color and would return a different color. Well, in order to use the function template from the standard library, we're going to need to include the functional header. And then just simply put in the type of function you are passing. Now let's create a default constructor that will automatically initialize our struct. So this is the equivalent of doing the static default props in React. And we're going to pass an initializer list to initialize this struct. And there we are. From here, we're going to create our class. Class myComponent extends the component base class. But note, we didn't include the namespace. So obs : component, and then you pass the template class of your props. And you have the option of also passing the state of your component, if your component has a state. We didn't define one, but let's go ahead and do that. And like before, we'll create a constructor that simply uses an initializer list to initialize the struct. And there we are. However, it would be a good idea to also make sure that your class that you're extending is public, so that way any components that use your component or any other structures that use your component would be able to access your base class's member functions that are public. So from here, let's create a constructor. Just like in React, we would pass our props as the first argument of our constructor. And like React, we would call super. In this case, we are using the extends notation. And every component has a render function. The render function is the primary interface from which components are able to compose themselves. So you can place components within components within components. To do this, you would call the createElement function, the same function as from React. And it takes in the same arguments as well. The first argument is your prop, the props that you're passing down to that component. In this particular case, we're just creating a default empty component. And now, let's create a main function. So int main, and in that main function, we'll just create a variable, and that variable will just simply be a component node. Pretty straightforward. So for more details, refer to the documentation in the library's GitHub.